Okay, and welcome back. This is the part 3 of the behind the scenes series that I'm doing over my last short film, which is called Number 8. You can go watch that down in the description below if you haven't, and go check out the other 2 behind the scenes videos that I made previously. In this one, we're going to talk about 3 really important things that are going to elevate your film, and a lot of people forget about. And these things are maybe not as sexy as the other parts of making a film, but they are probably more crucial than even the images that you create for the film. And the first one we're going to talk about is the most underrated thing of any film, and that is sound. Now, it's kind of like beating a dead horse at this point, but you hear a lot that sound is 50% of the film. It's just as important as the images that you create. And I would argue that it's more important than that. Without good sound, your film really is going to stand out and not feel as high quality, and maybe really just turn the audience off, and they may not even understand what's going on. Now, a lot of you actually did put down in the comments of the short film that it looked good, but also that it sounded really good. And that is no accident. We actually did get audio on the day, but we didn't really love how it turned out, and so we went back and we recreated all of the audio for the basically 90% of the film. It was that important to us. Having good audio was so important that we just basically almost like redid the whole film, but with audio. So we did this in the most controlled environment we could. Most of the film takes place in a car, so we're able to use a Sennheiser MKH416 and a Zoom F3 32-bit audio recorder to get the audio. 32-bit is really nice because it basically moves the gain of your audio to make sure you can't really clip the audio. You know, it's not like it'll save your audio every time, but it will save the clipping point, the high clipping point, if that ever comes about. It's a pretty remarkable thing, and a lot of things have 32-bit float now, and I highly recommend it if you're going to be recording audio. And then the MKH416 is probably one of the better microphones. It's one of the most standard microphones in Hollywood. You'll see that on sets all over the place. It is a shotgun style microphone, and that was also really crucial to getting good audio. These actually are pretty cheap used, like maybe $650 used. They're about $1,000 new. There's a couple newer versions of it, but I would highly recommend this microphone. And so basically, me and my friend Kyle did this ourselves. He was recording the audio, and I kind of acted as the actor. I put on a jacket that was similar to the jacket that the actor was wearing. Actually, maybe a jacket that would maybe be louder on audio, which would just add a more visceral take on the audio and make it pop more. And so I kind of acted and tried to time out the best I could, acting like the actor did in the actual film. And what's easy about this is we had the film to watch and play back and see what we needed. I also made a list of all the sounds that I thought would be better in the edit. I think we even got some extra ones that we didn't even end up using, but it's nice to go back and be able to just recreate all that. And this is standard practice in Hollywood and big budget films, laying in all sorts of new audio, creating Foley as they call it, basically recreating audio or even making up audio, which we did a little bit in this. We had the flashlight turning on. Like, that doesn't really make a noise in reality, but I took the flashlight and a piece of metal and I kind of just like clinked them together and made this kind of clicking sound, this kind of clicking on sound for the flashlight, and I just laid that into the edit. It just really amplifies what's going on in the frame. Now, a lot of this comes down to timing. You'll hear about like ADR, which is dialogue replacement later, and that's really hard because you're trying to time it with an actor when they're talking and you're having the actor redo the line. Similar thing here with Foley is you want to be able to like watch the clip, kind of time it out, and try to create the sound at the same speed that the actor did. It's a hard process. It is a craft of its own. And for the most part, I think we did a really good job here doing this. It wasn't like the most complicated thing, but it really adds so much to the film, and it's a crucial thing that I do with all my films, and you really should plan it into your schedule or plan it into your production. Know that you're probably going to have to go back and get more audio, and don't forget that when you're planning the budget or the days of production and so on. And speaking of ADR, I even actually wanted even a cleaner line. There was only one line in the whole short film. It's mostly just images and sounds, but there was one line of dialogue, and so I actually had the actor just use his phone and the audio recorder on the phone and give me like 8 or so new takes of the line just into the audio recorder there. This isn't the nicest microphone ever, but if you get it close enough to your mouth and you let Apple do its kind of stuff, noise canceling, etc., you're still gonna get a pretty nice, clean line of dialogue, and I actually use that to replace the line of dialogue that we had filmed initially. Now, you risk the acting not being as good, but in this case, I was able to give the direction and show him the film where we were at. We were able to get it basically exactly how it was, and it just sounded a lot cleaner and better. I was able to boost that in post and make it sound sound really nice. It's totally worth it. All these little extra steps are totally worth elevating your film. You're really gonna take, like, what really stands out with short films, especially, you know, low budget independent films that you see at festivals and online, is the audio. The audio will take a good film and make it bad if the audio is bad. And so it's a crucial step. Honestly, when you go out and buy your first camera and you start making films, I highly recommend also investing in a microphone right out of the gate. Don't mess around. Like, you're probably gonna want to get a pretty good microphone immediately. Otherwise, your films are just gonna suffer. And that kind of leads us into like more like sound effects, right? Like sound design. There was actually quite a few things in the film. Like, I mean, there was a dinosaur in the film, for instance, and we needed like dinosaur footsteps. So luckily my friend Ryan Scott, who also did the visual effects and actually acted in the last scene, had like monster footsteps. So that was one thing we were able to just like throw right in. But a lot of the other sound effects I needed when I started editing. Before I even went out and did the Foley, I wanted to lay in some audio to get that going and start designing some noises and stuff in there. And that's where the sponsor of this video comes in, which is Audio. Now, Audio is a music licensing platform, but they also have an entire sound effects library. So I was able just to go to that library and type in what I was looking for, you know, keys or engine starting, and, you know, those sort of small details I'll really add to the ambience and the texture of the film. And then just download those right from there and license those, and I was able just to throw those right into the film. Maybe some that didn't really line up with what we shot, or something I wanted a little different, then I was able to just record those on my own. But it saved me so much time in the edit. I was actually able to get way ahead in the edit and almost finished the film without doing Foley because I was able to grab so much sound effects from Audio. Now, Audio is also where the music came from in the film. You know, a lot of the inspiration for a lot of the driving shots in the film were from the movie Sicario. So I was actually able to use Audio's Hans AI to find a song similar to the soundtrack of Sicario, kind of matching that same vibe, because that was my inspiration. And so I just took the trailer, and there's some soundtrack in the trailer, and I just copy and pasted that trailer link into the Hans AI on Audio, and I was able to find songs with that similar vibe, that similar tone. And that's the music that I ended up using for the film. But if you actually don't have that soundtrack or that song that you're trying to maybe use as inspiration, you can simply type in what you're looking for. Maybe you could say something like the movie Sicario, or a tense thriller scene with driving in it. And you can just tell the AI what you're kind of looking for, and it will try to find songs that match that tone for you. Audio also just released their Pro mobile app, so you can browse and download songs on the go, save tracks directly to your phone for mobile editing, and of course your playlist will be synced across mobile and desktop. When you use the code Spencer to sign up for Audio Pro, you'll get unlimited music plus sound effects, unlimited link match AI searches, and access to the exclusive Audio Pro mobile app with $100 off your first year, bringing that yearly price down to only $99. So if that's something you need right now, click the link in the description to sign up for Audio today. And so like I was saying, some of those shots at the beginning were actually inspired by some shots that were in Sicario, these driving shots at night, where basically you can't see anything in the background. I'm really inspired by Roger Deakins' cinematography, and I like that he doesn't like light up the whole area with moonlight, which is not something that's naturally happening when you're driving your car. You're actually just seeing what the headlights are seeing, and it really creates this atmosphere and this mood, keeping it black like that. So that's what we were trying to do as well. And I thought those shots would just elevate the film even more, right? You could put a camera in a car and follow an actor around, and that's like kind of your standard issue because it's so easy just to put a camera there. But I thought, what can we do just to kind of take it up a notch, right? So we actually got a suction cup rig made by Small Rig, and we took the Red Komodo, which is just turning into being such a beautiful B camera, to my Red Monstro now. The Red Komodo, very reasonably priced now. I mean, I've had mine for a long time, but they've really come down in price. Makes a really good crash cam. I mean, that's what they were designed to be, so it's a really good B camera. I still use it as an A camera for many years. Great camera. But the global shutter when doing driving shots is amazing, because if you want to stabilize it, it just makes the image look a lot better and you don't have weird artifacting. But you also don't need to stabilize it as much. The natural jitters in there just don't look that bad because you're not getting the rolling shutter artifacts. So with that, it still shoots 6K. It still shoots red raw, so it just syncs right up with the Red Monstro that we were using in post. So we put the BIPOC Chimera C lenses on there. I think we had like the 21mm on it, the M mount on the Komodo, and then on that suction cup rig. And what we did is we took it really high on top of my grip van to get this kind of, this shot that wouldn't normally be that easy to do in an independent film. You know, you're getting it higher off the ground, you're getting a really nice moving shot, and you're getting this really high quality. I thought that would kind of elevate the film as well. So this is one of those things where it's like, let's go back, let's go get some better shots of driving. Let's really try to take this up a notch. And then likewise, what's another angle that isn't traditional, that's not easy to get? We wanted the camera to be kind of low on the ground, on the street, kind of a POV of the car driving. So we then section cut the Komodo to the front of our picture vehicle, which was a little bit lower than my van, and then tilted it down at the ground to kind of get that nice driving shot. And we shot even at like, I think 3200 ISO, 1600 ISO, and at night with the headlights on, and it looked really nice and clean. And we just left those like shakes in there just to give it a little bit of a natural tension to it. We didn't use a gimbal or anything, although the small rig suction cup rig you can mount a gimbal to that and get an even smoother setup, but we want it to be more hard mounted, a little more aggressive. But these are kind of those like extra shots, like, right, it's like you tell your story, but now like, how can I make the tone better? So we're opening the film with these driving shots, opening it with that music from audio, you know, kind of bringing the audience right into the film. It's only a 3-minute film, so we're trying to pretty quickly tell the audience what they're kind of getting themselves into. So I thought starting out with 2 more like high quality shots was the way to do that. These are things that you can just be thinking about. You can be thinking about your standard issue coverage and how to tell the story, but can you go back later and kind of raise the quality of everything with a few extra things, be a little bit more intentional about shots like that. And it was easy. I just monitored with, you know, the iPhone app from the Red. I didn't even put on a wireless module or anything, just to keep it light. And I just used my little suction cup in my car, and I was able to view the image from the Red Komodo that was on top of my van. Of course, we had it safetied with a cable so it didn't fall off. Not a big deal. It was actually on there so tight, we never had a problem with it. We mounted it, hit record, and rolled, and it just was honestly really simple and easy, and nothing went wrong. And then the last thing about this film, which is just sometimes you can't go get the shot, right? It's just kind of like the audio. Sometimes I don't have the audio for a dinosaur. Well, obviously we didn't have a dinosaur either. So that's when I implored my friend Ryan Scott, who acted in the end, did the VFX for me. And what we were able to do is actually just download a pre-made, like someone had really done a good job of making this T-Rex style dinosaur. I don't think it was actually a T-Rex, it was a different kind of dinosaur. We thought that would make it a little bit more interesting as well. Actually, I'll just let Ryan take it from here.
It's not great, but it would work for what we're trying to do. This is in Blender, and so you can see if we were to get into this dinosaur, he's got some pretty decent motion to him. He can move around pretty good and has some of the motions that we need. I added some IK rigging to him so that he would have the right kinds of bounce. And if you'll notice that dinosaurs are, well, like Jurassic Park has taught us, dinosaurs are indeed birds. And so they do have to actually bounce, like their heads need to kind of bounce and interact like a bird might. And he definitely has that bird action happening with his head. So he looked pretty good. He worked out the way that we would want. He also had a pretty good texture to him. The material wasn't bad, especially for what Spencer was going to try to do. He wanted it to be very, very far away, and he wanted it to be very darkly lit. And so, per Spencer's usual style, things are pretty backlit and just sort of shaped, which that's one of his distinguishable. That's why I think VFX worked for him, because he is able to hide a lot of the blemishes of which that I will create with my VFX. He doesn't put them in broad, brutal daylight. He actually puts the VFX in lighting that is complementary and kind to the VFX artist. And so this dinosaur actually looks pretty darn good in the dark lighting scenario. But that's how we started off first with the VFX. You can see we've got an okay walk cycle that I started with him. He's looking all right. Like he's getting kind of a nice kind of bounce to him. There's a little bit of a hitch in his step that I didn't like, and I had to work really hard on trying to get that hitch out of his step. But eventually we got there. It wasn't too bad. Let me see if I can show you some later iterations of how this went. Ultimately, we got to a point where we were trying to decide if the dinosaur should be on a VFX plate, like on a plate that Spencer went out and shot, or if this should be a fully CG environment. And there's good and bad with both. The nice part of it being fully CG is that you would be able to control the lighting and be able to control the environment of what is happening in these scenarios. You know, you can light a whole forest as this dinosaur is walking his way down to us. You can light the whole entire forest and light, the world is kind of at your fingertips in a way. Whereas if you were to shoot a real plate, it has some limitations to that, right? You may not have the time, B, you may not have the right weather, enough crew, etc. It can really be kind of complicated in shooting an actual plate. Now, the actual plate is almost always going to look superior as opposed to the fully CG environment. But you can see here, this is where I was testing out to see if we can get a pretty decent CG environment that was akin to or close to what Spencer was going for with his plate. And so I've got an HDRI background back there, and I've got some, you can see, let me kind of move this over, some vegetation. We've got our dinosaur coming along. And again, his walk is still just kind of not there. Like, he's still got this weird, like, chicken leg going on. So I had to kind of fight some of the IK bones to make that work. It never really quite got there in this iteration. But then Spencer went out and shot a plate like this. So here was his plate. And again, he went out at a really good time of day, had the lighting scenario that he was happy with, and that I think we could definitely work within. And I had the idea of this dinosaur kind of coming up over this ridge and walking down towards the car. So this is the view of the actor, the POV view of the actor as the creature is coming down the road, or the monster's coming down the road, the dinosaur's coming down the road. And a shot like this that's pretty handheld was super easy to track. That wasn't too bad. I track everything in After Effects, and I was able to get a pretty decent track on it. See if I can show you what that looked like. So here is here's the plate with the tracking on it, and you can see here comes. See if we can wait this one out for a second. But you can see the tracking it found it just fine. Like, it found these few key points. I then take this camera data and I import that camera data into Blender, and Blender then translates this camera data from After Effects into Blender. And so it's able to kind of give me some pretty good tracking. Sometimes it nails it, sometimes it's terrible and you gotta fight it, but it did a pretty good job. So you can see here, this is the render straight out of Blender, put on top of of Spencer's plate. Of course, none of this matches, right? Like, of course, this dinosaur doesn't look the right. We'd had to do a ton of compositing to try to make him look right. Here is another take, or another render. You can see, let me put this on full here. You can see back here, we added, quite a bit of noise. It definitely added some blur to him. That's probably actually too much blur. And then we added some noise. Just a little bit of that grain can go a long way in making, sort of blending in the VFX into the footage. Because even at, Spencer's big, beautiful 8K reds, even those have some grain to them, especially when you zoom in that far. And so, yeah, that's probably a touch too much blur. I think I ended up probably backing up off that a little bit. But yeah, and so that's the creature inside there. Now, once we threw on this is essentially the plate I would have sent Spencer, and then he would go in and color grade it. I think he did something a little different than I did here, but it was pretty darn close to this. And again, he wanted it to be very dark. It had to match the rest of the scene to where you just kind of make out the shape of something approaching. So it was pretty fun. I had to kind of time out his footsteps with the audio, so he laid the audio in there and had this like boom, boom, boom. I had to kind of try and match the audio of the footsteps coming in, so that was kind of fun. But yeah, that's how the dinosaur ultimately came together. Kind of a real quick overview of how that process went. And then let's see some of the other VFX. All right, so he shot a plate here where we have the car out in the field and it's exploding. I added some of my own camera shake to that. It actually looked like this, where we just had our actor out in the field and he was there. That was it, just a plate of the actor in the field. Then Spencer went and shot a lit shot here where I've masked out. Let me see if I can turn this off for a second. You can see there's that Joker right there in the middle with his light pointed up at the trees, and we're trying to get kind of an explosion happening. So yeah, and that was helpful because then I was able to use the exposure of that on that tree to then give what would look like an actual explosion later. So if I were to put these two together, it would look something like that, right? We still don't have the fire, we still don't have all the other effects quite yet, but we're getting there. We're getting to a point where something looks like it's exploding. So he shot the plate flat, which is the actor there, and then he shot the trees. And then I added a little bit of camera shake. He could have shot this with shake, and we could have tracked it, but it can go either way. It's more of like a creative choice, in my opinion. And then you can, this is where I had some fun with AI. Obviously, AI is kind of controversial, but at times it's going to be pretty helpful, I think. And so I used one from something called AI Tubo. There's loads of these. I don't know really which ones are better. I just know that we loaded our plate into AI, and it uses Runway's model, and it gave us a pretty cool look. Let me show you some of the ones actually that were kind of fails. That was kind of funny to see fail. This was one, our first take, and it just it had a good time. It just kept going. It just kept on exploding. And then it kind of moved the camera in, and it did things that we wouldn't have done. But it did some things that are pretty awesome. So the initial explosion actually isn't too bad. It's probably a bit too kind of fluidy. It almost looks like a fluid. And then it's got all these little sprites, like, almost like artifacty sprites that come out of it. You can see this kind of gridded pattern that the AI is trying to create. Pretty fascinating. But it exploded the car, and it moved it around in a really fun way, but the camera moved back. We've got this kind of weird terrain that's happening. It's not quite what we wanted, and it just kept exploding, like it was just full of fireworks. So not exactly what we wanted. So I went back in, kind of gave it a couple other prompts to sort of say, hey, not like that, like, try to direct it in a more focused way. And then it did this. Better, right? So the camera stayed locked. It's got a little bit of a shake. It's not too bad. I told it not to move the camera so much. And we're still getting this kind of gridded pattern in the explosion that I didn't love, but I was able to kind of clean some of that out. But what I did like was the very first initial physics, like the very initial physics of it exploding, like from here on, looked really good. It still got this kind of firework effect that I don't like, but the initial physics of the car kind of bouncing around just right, some of the pieces coming off, was actually pretty darn good. So I decided, why don't we enhance this? Why don't we use this as like the base and then enhance it? Part of the problem is this is pretty low res. I think it's only HD. So I was gonna have to kind of enhance it anyway. And so what we ended up doing was something like this, where I then went in and made my own car in Blender and had it kind of bounce around, shake around, open up the tailgate some, use that to kind of hide some of the stuff that I didn't like. And then I also enhanced it with some VFX explosions that we found online. And then, of course, this is all quarter res. Let me move that up. And kind of added in some wood debris, various types of things. So ultimately, we landed on a VFX shot that looked, pretty realistic. Spencer was going to cut away pretty fast from it too, and so we didn't necessarily need to see all of it, but I always try to give him a little bit of headroom on both sides of that. So you can see we've got a little bit of the AI in there, but then it's also added in with some of my fire, some of my car, and then we added in some more debris. It just looks a little higher fidelity than what the AI was giving us, which kind of gave us a base, and then I sort of enhanced it and added things to it. And then as the explosion went along, then we just let it kind of carry out, and I had some of my plate back there. I think that's still a little bit of the AI segment back inside there. So there is a world where AI can be used in an effective way, in a way that's going to be a tool that's going to help us create better VFX. And there's loads of those out there that are starting to crop up more and more that are pretty darn awesome. So yeah, that's how we ultimately did the VFX for the explosion. Let me see if I can show you. Spencer cut it off in his edit, but I can show you more what that looked like in the final explosion. Here it is. Kaboom! Pretty fun. So I did add some tires in there that flew off and a couple other bigger debris, but I didn't really like it. But yeah, ultimately it was just meant to be a really quick shot anyway. It wasn't meant to be seen for a long time. So yeah, that's how we did that. Next up was what I call household VFX, which are just like things that just have to happen that make sense for the story. Spencer found a road that he liked. He found a lighting condition that he liked. But of course, he's not going to have the exact right sign that makes sense for the script either. So he needed a notice restricted area sign that did not exist. So he went out to a field, shot where he wanted it, and kind of moved the camera in that way. This one was a bugger to track, and I couldn't quite get a good track on it because clearly you can see why. We've got all the planes are moving and all the surfaces are moving, and so the tracker had a really hard time. It kept losing its tracks. And so what I did was reversed it and reversed the footage so that the tracker could find something to start with, and then as it went backwards, it had a better time keeping up with its tracks. And for some reason that worked like a charm. So, but yeah, this was another one of those shots where we had to just put in some kind of VFX that felt realistic and felt like it could be there. And so it was just a simple 3D sign that I rendered out of Blender and then tracked it. And then of course we added in a few things to it, like when it comes in raw, it looks something like this straight out of Blender. You can export log out of Blender, but I felt like this was going to treat us better. And so it needed a couple of things. So I added in, some more contrast. You can obviously see this is more grainy and this is not. And so I added in a little bit of noise until eventually it kind of blends in with the shot better. And especially once you put a grade on this, it's gonna really blend in and look like the real thing. So let me see if I can show you the blend project of what that looked like. Here's the sign. Let's turn this off for a sec. You can see the camera is moving in a way that looks like the car did. It should have, and like I said, I did get a pretty good track out of it eventually. Reversed it and then flipped the keyframes back over here. And then I added like this little extra tree, a little bit of foliage, and we ended up with this. So anyways, hopefully that gives you a rundown of how some of these VFX came together for number 8. It was very fun.
But sometimes you have to go back in, right? You want to be able to go back in and polish up the film, elevate it a little more. And that's where the sound effects came in. That's where those kind of more over-the-top shots came in. And then, of course, the VFX came in. So there's just like these little things at the end that I had to do, adding the music, adding the sound effects. And then color grading, of course, not really much to talk about there. I had built this kind of cinema LUT for the last film that I did, and we actually used that same color for this. Kind of reminds me of like an early 2000s, middle, 2012 style film. Just thought it would be fun to do from a color perspective, and I just kind of stuck with that tone throughout. We're gonna focus a little bit more on dialogue and acting in the next short film. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see that. And obviously there'll be lots of behind the scenes of that as well. So if you have any other questions about making number 8, just drop those in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer those. This is the last video in the series, but I can answer those in the comments, no problem. But as always, guys, I'm Socha Sakurai. See ya.